How do you become an entrepreneur? There's no exact answer to that. There's no one answer to that, but I'll tell you what I have seen. I am the editor-in-chief of this magazine right here, Jason Pfeiffer. My name, this is not called Jason Pfeiffer. I'm the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. My name is Jason Pfeiffer. And what I have learned is that entrepreneurs often take some skill, some insight from their past, and then apply it in a new way to solve a new problem, to build something new for the world. And how do they do that? Well, that is what we're going to focus on for the next 30 minutes in this fascinating conversation with two entrepreneurs from very different backgrounds, from the military to a grocery store when he was 10 years old. And they have both channeled those experiences into building great things. And so here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to talk to one at a time, and we're going to dive into their backgrounds and how they harnessed things from their past to build something for the future. And the first person I want to welcome in, the first entrepreneur, is named Terry Kim. He is the founder and CEO of NGT Academy. Terry, your mission, you say, is to train 1 million cyber warriors by 2025. We're going to talk about what that means in just a second. But first, Terry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Jason. Super excited to be here.
Awesome. And Terry, the reason why we are speaking today is because you are featured on our show, Going Public. It is a groundbreaking series that follows the stories of founders and their capital raising journey. And for the first time, viewers around the world can click to invest while they watch, which is pretty awesome. Before we talk, let's just take a quick look at you on the show.
All right.
What are some key milestones that you believe that we should hit to be able to IPO in 18 months?
For me, it all comes back to kind of business fundamentals. I think whatever path you choose, at the end of the day, you're going to be assessed off of your KPIs, of your business metrics. Overall enrollment, job placement, customer acquisition costs. These all need to be trending in the right direction because you're going to have to continue to deliver value for your shareholders long term.
All right, that's great stuff. Terry, I want to understand what you mean by train 1 million cyber warriors by 2025, but let's first back up a little bit. Can you give me a little bit about your background and about NGT Academy?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I didn't always start as an entrepreneur. I actually cut my teeth in the Air Force and worked my way into information technology on the help desk. Worked my way up to a network engineer, working on infrastructure, cyber ops, cybersecurity, and then eventually became an instructor and a trainer for the Air Force, where I trained thousands of airmen for this. Now it's merged into a job field called 3 Delta Cyber Ops Command. But yeah, that's my background. Got out of the military and worked in the information technology sector for 20 plus years as a systems engineer. Got my dream job at Cisco Systems, worked at other amazing companies like Arista Networks. And it just dawned on me, I had an amazing career in IT, and I knew that I knew there was a better way to train and get people into cybersecurity. And so that's where the idea of this concept of zero to engineer was born.
And do you feel like when you look back on your career, you were building towards this moment in some way, that the skills that you learned, which in very different arenas, both in business and in the military, were combining in a way to create something that maybe you felt you were uniquely positioned to be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, I would say connecting back, it makes sense. But like at the time, when I was going through my career in information technology, I never thought about creating a training company. So some of the greatest founders or people that are entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs, my advice is look at what your skill sets are. Where do you find the most passion and excitement? And do you have certain problems that you foresee where you can solve and make an impact? So for us, and me and my co-founder Jacob, it was not more about like, hey, let's start a training academy, it started off us in the career and understanding there's a huge job skills gap and a huge deficit of, it's a zero unemployment career field. Why change a million lives within, the next 5-10 years? Well, why not? There's 3.5 million unfilled cyber jobs by the end of this year. So can we create a training program to take people from zero to engineer in a matter of months versus years? And we said, yes, we know how to do this. We actually did it in the military, and we had to train 18, 19-year-olds and get them battlefield ready in just a short matter of months. So that's when the idea came about. It was like, yeah, we can take people from zero to engineer in a matter of months and really democratize access to technical education at a rapid, faster rate to help the economy as well.
Terry, we've got an engaged audience here. Everyone from Miami, Florida to Tanzania who have said hello. So hi to everybody. If anybody has any questions, feel free to drop them in and we will bring them right into the conversation. But I want to pick up on that point that you had made a second ago about the advice that you give to entrepreneurs, right? So a lot of times people are not sitting around thinking, what can I build? Maybe I should leave my job and start a company. But
Yep.
They can be aware that by working in whatever field they are in, doing whatever it is that they're doing, they have an insight that others don't. They're seeing problems that others may not recognize and pain points that lots of people would like to be solved. Can you speak a little bit more to your own evolution and what you suggest entrepreneurs do to maybe recognize that they're seeing something, they're seeing an opportunity that could really be seized?
Absolutely. It's a great point, Jason. Like most, founders, instead of like looking at trying to put a bunch of ideas on the wall and see what sticks, I think some entrepreneurs are born out of necessity. Either they're working for a corporation or a startup, and they're like, wow, there's this huge problem here in my, domain. For example, in 2013, when my co-founder and I started looking at project management software, why did we start that company? It was called Check Action. And we started that company because we saw the problem day to day in our job as an IT professional. People were using spreadsheets, people were using Microsoft Access and just a bunch of disparate tools. And we said, what if we could bring all these disparate tools into the cloud and just make our jobs easier when we're doing a bunch of IT projects? So again, here's a story of when I was in corporate, I saw the problem. I was at Cisco Systems and managing a lot of projects and clients, and I saw, wow, there could be a better software application that could solve all of this and bring it all together. So again, if you are an aspiring founder, or if you're just, working in a corporation, you can identify problems and say, hey, how could I solve that problem by building a company, a service, a product or a solution service that solves that problem? And it really just starts there. And once you get that one problem solved, you really spin up an idea and build a company around just that one problem set.
Those three words that started a lot of the questions that you just posed there, what if I, are really powerful, because what you're doing is you're posing a theory to yourself. You're saying,
Yep.
What if I did this? And then at that point, you now have something, you haven't built it. It's not a concrete thing, but it's an idea. It exists, and you can work backwards from it and say, well, what would it create? What would it take to build this? And what would be the result of it? Who would want it? How could we make it better? In a way, I wonder if the thing that you're saying here, and I just sort of put it back to you, is that sometimes the best way to start is just with a theory, with a hypothesis that you can then start to test.
That's correct. It starts with a theory, and then once you get like a idea of how to create the solution, then you can test it out. You can test it out using wireframes. For example, if it's a software solution, for us, it's a training solution. We took 12 students under our wing and started mentoring them, and within 6 months, they were getting insane promotions and just real amazing life-changing events, breaking into jobs that they never dreamed of. So it's about creating that first pilot or creating that first, hypothesis and just proving that this is going to be a better solution than what's existing in the world right now. So At the end of the day, you can create a solution around a problem that exists, and do it better than existing products or services. That's how ideas are born.
Dan Rockwell left a comment. He said, the game is pattern matching, which I really like, the idea of pattern matching, of recognizing how things are working around you and then seeing something that others don't. But then also he said, plus also the hustler has to be calibrated for the journey. That's an interesting way of thinking about it. Calibrated for the journey. What do you make of that as someone who seems to have been quite calibrated for the journey through lots of different experiences?
Yeah, I think the best ideas that you can solve is areas where you have one passion, but you're calibrated for the journey, because, you know, entrepreneurship is super hard. It's never like a rocket ship up, right? It's never an overnight success story. It takes 10 years sometimes to hear these overnight success stories. So it's the passion that's going to get you through, you know, the grit, the perseverance, right? And if it's something that you're passionate about and you have deep domain expertise, I believe you're calibrated, because you can see the blind spots. You can see how this is going to manifest in the world because you've experienced that pain, or you've experienced the pain enough where you're like, man, I'm sick and tired of seeing this problem. I know there's a better solution that can make, you know, this problem disappear. And I think that's the powerful, journey that you get to experience as an entrepreneur, and the excitement that comes from taking that idea from nothing and then being calibrated along the journey, because you have domain expertise and you have the right skill sets and you are the right founders to solve that particular problem. I think that's where you can really make a differentiation. Is like where even investors look at this team or this startup in this company and says, hey, are these the founders to really solve this problem at scale? So great question.
And what you're talking about there makes me think about the importance of learning resilience and of knowing going into something as challenging as building something, creating something new, knowing that there's no possible way for you to create the perfect version of it the very first time. I wonder if you learned something, thinking back to your own background, learned something from working in the military, which must put a lot of emphasis on learning resilience, on rethinking tactics, on knowing that whatever the first step that you're going to take is not possibly going to be the first perfect one, but rather you've just got to get into the operation, learn, and then adjust as you go. What did you learn from that experience that is applied to the business world?
Yeah, I would say from the military, you know, some values that carried over to, you know, as a founder or an entrepreneur would be like discipline. I'd say at the end of the day, you know, the biggest takeaway I got from the military is discipline and accountability, right? So in order to create, perseverance and persistency and grit and all this, is at the end of the day, you have to have discipline to start a company, or to take an idea from nothing and then make it something beautiful. So I've learned, you know, discipline, accountability, things like that, grit during the military days, to not to give up and to come back, you know, if things fail. Because I always like to say, fail fast and succeed faster. And it's so true, right? You can't figure it out. You can't figure every little nuance out. You just got to ship the product. You got to just take action and then learn from it. And what I like to tell entrepreneurs is, even our students, is this company value we have called Kaizen. And it means continuous improvement or change for good. So you can ship something, but how do you iterate on it constantly and make it better and better over time? That's the secret there. I see too many founders get hung up and they want to ship the perfect product and they never end up shipping it, you know, because they have doubt, fear, or it's like it's not perfect enough. And nothing's going to ever be perfect. You just got to ship it and just try to make it better.
Terry, our time is coming to a close here, and then I'm going to bring on Tony Drockton from Hammitt. But before I let you go, I cannot ignore the number of questions that, even though this is a little off topic for what we've been talking about, but very on topic for going public, which again, I should say, a groundbreaking series that follows the stories of founders on their capital raising journey. A number of people have asked about that. And one in particular, I'll just say, because he asked it so nice and simple, was Omar Corretto, who asked, what is the most simple way to begin raising capital? Can you share some thoughts briefly on your journey there, and maybe some advice for folks who are at the very beginning of their own?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a loaded question. But, you know, I would say if you want to raise capital, there's plenty of capital. You know, this is like the perfect time, you know, in history to be alive as an entrepreneur. We got crowdfunding going on. You've got VCs pouring billions of dollars. You've got so much innovation, technology happening right now. But, you know, I would say two things. One, to raise a proper pre-seed or seed round, to get that idea, to get your team formation, you really just need a PowerPoint deck, a good solid pitch deck with deep domain expertise in that problem that you're solving, and you could raise a pre-seed round. A second option is that you can, if you're not going to create a pitch deck and raise a seed round, you could also apply to incubators or accelerators. You know, there's Y Combinator, there is Techstars, there is 500 startups, bunch of incubators around the world, and that could get you to that would be the most simplest way to raise capital, in my opinion, because it's 3 months and then a demo day, and then you get to raise, you know, to a bunch of people that are angel investors or that are seed investors.
Perfect. Really useful advice. Terry, Kim, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your journey.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And if you want some, you know, shares of NGT, you can go to invest.ngt.academy and check us out. And yeah, thank you, Jason.
Perfect. Thank you, Terry. And now we're going to turn to our other entrepreneur who we're featuring today, Tony Drockton, the founder and chief cheerleader of Hammitt. He'll have to explain that in a moment. Now, Tony, you have a really fascinating background as well. Very different from Terry's. And we're going to talk about that and how you have harnessed your own background to build this great company. But before we do, you are also featured on Going Public, our groundbreaking series that follows the stories of founders on their capital raising journey. So let's take a quick look at you on the show.
Great. With a valuation of 4 times 2021 revenue, so 120 million pre-money.
What support do you have for that 4 times the 30 million?
There's 3 metrics that everyone looks at: the revenue, the growth rate, and the profit margin. But the 4th one is brand equity. We thought 4 times 2021 revenues was quite reasonable. That's how we looked at valuation. We wanted to make sure that these founding investors, they got a really fair shake if we execute on the plan.
All right. We're looking good on there.
Thanks, Jason.
So, Tony, when we were talking just before we got going here, I was making sure that I knew your background, and I said to you, let's make sure this is correct. After earning your MBA, you spent over a decade managing successful businesses in construction, real estate, and home finance. I know it's a nice, is this the resume dance that you're doing?
It is.
You said, yeah, all that is fine, but everything that you needed to learn, or maybe I'm overstating it, you learned in your dad's grocery store where you started working at age 10. Tell me about that.
I mean, it's true, Jason. And it's like Warren Buffett started in a grocery store, late night talk show host. It's when you work in grocery stores, retail at an early age, you have to do it all. So my dad owned one, so I was lucky to start working at 10. And I did receiving. We did cash register. We did restocking. I had to understand the merchandising. I mean, always around the ends was your bread and your milk was way in the back because that's what people came for. And the middle was, so I understand pricing, repricing, because when I was there, we had inflation and had to reprice products. I understood profit margins, and my dad actually taught me the numbers. We would even sit and count the cash at the end of the day, which helped me really understand math and finance. But the most important thing I didn't mention was when you're working in the grocery business, when you're ringing the cash register, you have to learn how to adapt to people quickly, because if there's 10 people in line, one's in a hurry, One wants to talk forever. The other one's a little bit unorganized. So, and you have to adjust each time. So the interpersonal skills of working in a restaurant or me working in a grocery store, they're so key to becoming an entrepreneur that everything carried with me. So there you go.
You know, it's funny. I was recently asked by a student in college who aspires to be an entrepreneur, start his own business. And he had asked me, what job do I think he should take to prepare himself for this? And my answer back then was, well, I think that if you have a specific kind of business that you want to start, then going and working in a business like that can give you a lot of insights into what it takes. But I love your answer here too, because what you're saying is any job, even something as basic as working in a grocery store, can give you really valuable insights about how business works, how customers think, and how you can move people through a process so that they're happy and you're happy too.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I recently read a book called Range, David Epstein, and he did a study on athletes. And, you know, there's that $10,000 rule Malcolm Gladwell wrote about, and everybody just seemed to follow that. Well, he came out and said, wait a minute, let's take a look at Tiger Woods and Federer, right? Federer really late in his career, tennis. Tiger Woods his entire time, golf. Well, Federer's still killing it, right? And then he took that to business people and entrepreneurs, did a similar study. And he found out the most successful long-term entrepreneurs and CEOs had a very wide range prior to specializing. And when I read the book, I was like, yes, I could stop pretending that I needed to be in fashion since I was out of the womb, because I didn't jump into fashion until 13 years ago. And all the things I did before that, they seemed to spare it. But the fact that I was in digital advertising taught me the digital side of it. The fact that I was in construction taught me so much about construction and real estate. The fact that I even had a roofing company, right? Then I jump into what I did afterwards, which was residential finance. I drew from all of those when I got into this business, because this is dynamic. This is not just making handbags. That's the most important part in getting the product right. But the most important part over the last 13 years, which we started in the Great Recession all the way through now, was being adaptable to the outside environment enough to survive, but not so much that I'm being swayed left and right by the current narrative. So we stuck with that same narrative my dad taught me in the grocery store, which is really simple. You know, whatever you do, be the best, the absolute best. Every customer that you take care of, they should walk out with a smiling face and be happy for that 5-second interaction. It's almost that simple in everything you do as an entrepreneur. If you're the best at whatever you're doing today, you have a chance to be a successful entrepreneur. I think the big mistake is something that you said. A lot of people, they see somebody doing something and say, I could do that. They jump right in and start a business. But what your recommendation is right on. Work for them. And work for them as long as you can, so you learn everything that you should do. And more importantly, take away some lessons that you don't have to repeat, because you got to learn on their dime, on their mistakes. If you can do that, and you're already the best at what you're doing, you have a great chance of being a successful entrepreneur.
There's a fantastic roadmap for getting started. Tony, I am happy to inform you that we have one of your investors watching right now. I invested with Hammitt through going public, writes Jim Blair. I heard about the product from a friend who shared their appreciation for their first Hammitt purchase. I did some research online and watched Tony and some other interviews on YouTube, and then I suppose invested. So this begs the question. We haven't actually gotten to it after all this great advice that you have offered. Tell me about Hammitt.
Okay. Hey, Jim, thank you so much for trusting me. First of all, means the word to me. And I'm give a shout out to Dr. Muller and George Howard from Bowling Green. They're the first ones that told me I could be an entrepreneur. So about Hammitt, a little over 13 years ago, right here in Manhattan Beach and Hermosa Beach, California, I met Stephanie Hammitt. She had these beautiful bags that she was designing, and she needed an investor. So I came in first as an investor. And in the first year, she decided that she really wanted me to really take over and run the company. So I took majority, and we were off and running. And what really, I guess, got me excited about the product was she was doing these little home parties. And I went with her, and it was just wine and cheese and a charity component. And people fell in love with the handbags because of the community that it was creating in the home. And they always left with some of those designs. And I was like, I think we could do something with this. And that's exactly what we're doing 13 and a half years later. We're bringing people together because of their passion for our designs, but really what's behind that? The same type of person loves carrying a Hammitt because they enjoy community. They enjoy connecting. They enjoy seeing each other in the airport and going, Hammitt, oh, wow, where'd you get yours? Where'd you get mine? It brings people together.
And we've got another investor here too. Kimberly Kylo says,
hey, I didn't pay these people to do this now, Jason. Don't worry.
They paid you, in fact. Well, not in some way or another. Well, that's fantastic. And, I love that we talked about the fundamentals of business and of what it takes to get into business before we even talked about Hammitt, because it makes this journey of yours make a lot more sense. I bet a lot of people, when they see what you've done before and they say managing construction, real estate, home finance, and they say, wait, what now? Did I miss something here?
Right.
But what you're saying is, look, it's all about fundamentals. It's all about understanding people. It's all about solving problems. And that's a really transferable skill set.
Yeah, it really is. I love to read history, especially books around really successful entrepreneurs from the 60s, 70s, 80s, all the way through. And the common theme really is they always look back way in their history to find the commonalities for success. They were never focused on today and what's happening today. Because if you're doing that, you're already too late. You have to live in the past on what was successful, and then you have to project 5 to 10 years in the future to make sure whatever choice you make today is going to still work then. I call it second order thinking, not first order. First order thinking in business is, hey, let's throw out discounts. Discounts, they're going to buy more. Second order thinking says, my dad's grocery store, if bread and milk is always on sale, that's just the price. So when he put milk on sale, woo, we were flooded, but it wasn't very often. Does that make sense? So that's how we think about running Hammitt. If we cheapen the quality just a little bit today, the margins go up. But that's a slippery slope. And people will stop carrying our Hammitts one day because they won't feel proud about connecting in the airport. They're going to look at each other and go, oh, I remember when Hammitt was a great brand. That rips my heart out. Never going to happen while I'm leading this company.
Do you recommend, and look, I know that there's no one path for entrepreneurs, and the easy answer here is to say, do whatever, but do you feel like people should stay closer to where their core experience is? Or do you feel like there's something to be said for taking something that you've learned in one arena and then moving it to a completely different one?
I think you can do both. Honestly, are you Federer or are you Tiger Woods, right? If I had to make a recommendation, I would say yes to almost everything early on, whatever your age is, 15 to 40. That's early on, by the way. Yes. Yes to doing things on the weekends. Yes to going run a marathon. Yes to going to a festival. Your personal yeses will also flow into your business yeses, number one. And then you'll start to figure out what works for you. And the other thing is stop networking. Don't do that. That's not how you build a great business. Start connecting with people just one-on-one, and only connect with people that you have the same passion with. If you're in a transactional relationship with anybody because you think it's going to get you somewhere, well, you're both going to lose from that. So, I heard a podcast that you recently did with a great talk show host, and you had that conversation. It was like, listen, you guys knew each other for a while and suddenly have this amazing interview. So, and the fact that I'm even talking with you, Entrepreneur Magazine, this is a dream for an entrepreneur to have an interview with the editor of the magazine that I've read forever. I mean it. It's just, it is. This is awesome. And if you're listening and you want to do this, just keep making great relationships. And hopefully one day you'll be sitting right here and just talking about how that worked for you. Because it's worked for us at Hammitt, and it worked for me in my personal life. And right now I'm just happier than ever.
I couldn't endorse what you just said more. I think all that is so powerful. I just yesterday reminds me of just yesterday. And by the way, we've got a few more minutes together. So if anybody has any questions, drop them in the comments. I'm happy to bring them in. But it reminds me of a conversation I was having yesterday. I was speaking to a group of college students, and somebody had asked me about networking. You just brought up networking. And I said, I think the thing that people misunderstand about networking is that they think that networking is a matter of identifying someone who is in a position to help you and then just going and asking for their help. And it doesn't generally work that way. I mean, look, if you can find that kind of relationship, then fantastic. But it's a hard one to find, and you can't go around shopping for it. Instead, what I have found through my own career is that the people who have been the most valuable to me are people who I met who were at my level, at whatever level that is, going all the way back. So even when I was just starting out and had no idea where my career was going to go, I tried to reach out to these people who were very successful, and they would return my emails and they'd be very nice, but they wouldn't help me. But then these peers, these people who I could just become invested in their success and they become invested in mine. These are the people who for decades have worked with me and have helped me, and I have helped them. And those are the people who are so powerful. And that is the way that we need to be thinking about connecting. You're right. It's not transactional. It can't possibly be. It has to just be about building relationships that matter.
Yeah. Yep. You know, that's the 5, right? You're the average of the 5 people you hang out with.
Right.
And I always tell, I have nieces and nephews, edit that 5 now, because if you're the lowest, that's great. But if you're the highest of the average right now, you probably got to change your 5 to grow. So very hard to do, but once you do it, you realize we all can grow together as individuals and as human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, there was just a nice little, I'm going to just, you're an investor. I'm just going to read a comment from Jim Blair. I appreciate what was shown on the program through meeting with Chris Birch. You have to trust your gut instinct. I can relate to your comment from my perspective of owning an IT managed service business for the last 18 years. You want to speak to that?
Yeah. That was one of my first meetings when we started the Going Public series. And that was the first time I was on TV with them. And it was brutal. I mean, I went in to Hamptons. I'm in this mansion. I've never been anything like that before. And Chris kind of ripped my business apart. No, he did. I mean, he told me that I had to leave my manufacturer because the costs were too high. And if he was going to invest, that was going to be the number one. And then we had to cut our costs everywhere. And blah, blah, all these things about lower cost. And I was like, maybe you didn't hear me. We're not about that. And, you know, my manufacturer carried me in the darkest of days with credit and terms, and their quality is unbelievable. So right then and I remember I cried. They didn't put that on the screen. Afterwards, I was teary eyed because a billionaire just told me I was doing it wrong. But I gathered up, and afterwards I was able to go, you know what? It's just not a person that's a match for investing in me. Very successful. A different company should take money from a Chris Birch, but Hammitt and a Chris Birch mentality are diametrically opposite, because 13 years to just get where we're at, which it's a nice place, but it's a $90 billion industry. I've got lots of room to grow in an established industry with what we're doing, and it's working. So thanks for that comment, Jim.
Yeah, that's really wonderful. And it makes me think about how powerful it can be once you think, and maybe this is a nice place to end as we come up on our time. So I'll just ask you to kind of reflect on this, about how powerful it is when you get into business and you just start thinking of every single thing as a data point, not as a failure, not as something that is personal, but literally just every single thing is something that you learned, something that you didn't know 5 minutes before. And that can help direct you in ways that you just couldn't have known before.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, look at this most recently, you know, I like to call it the private capital markets, not crowdfunding. Heard that somewhere. That's what we decided to do. We could easily done another round with private equity. We're killing it. But this was a huge risk. My job as the entrepreneur is to take shots and to go for it. And when I look back at all the businesses, sure, I've got some successes that I could talk to you about. Let me share the failures if we had time. That list is way longer, but they weren't. They're lessons. You know, Jason, if you learn from them and you grow, you get to an opportunity where you can have a conversation like this.
Well, Tony, I really appreciate your perspective. Also, thank you to Terry Kim, who came on before you. Hearing both of your journeys, I think, is really inspiring and shows that anything that you have done so far can inspire you, can guide you, can give you the kinds of insights that other people don't to build something for the future. You can see both Terry and Tony on our show Going Public, I'll say it one more time, a groundbreaking series that follows the stories of founders on their capital raising journey. And for the first time, viewers around the world can click to invest while they watch, which some of our viewers today have apparently already done. So thank you so much. And we'll keep watching.
Thanks, Mom. Love you. See you.
Bye.